He was slumped, silent, and alone, mocked by the galaxy's elite. No armor, no weapons, no reputation. Just a human sitting on the floor. But when the first strike came, he stood, and the galaxy would never laugh again. The Citadel of Realms hovered above the neutral zone, a fortress station that existed outside any one empire's reach. It was the place where ancient treaties were signed, where criminals tried, and defense pacts negotiated. But today, it was hosting something far rarer. A showcase of planetary guardians. Delegates from 52 worlds sat in crescent rows across a multi-tiered chamber, each watching with keen interest. Species of every physiology and background, scaled, feathered, crystalline, gas-based, all focused on the wide central platform. One by one, the chosen warriors of each civilization stepped into the light. The Trogarn unleashed a bellow that cracked the reinforced glass, his spiked fists slamming against his own chest. The Vorzek Sentinel performed a gravity-flipping acrobatic kata that ended with 6 blades hovering mid-air around his body. Even the Cerelian Lightborn, a being composed of quantum-phased plasma, bent the visible spectrum in ways that caused lesser species to go blind if stared at too long. Applause, admiration, reverent fear. And then, the final name echoed. Representative of Terra, Human Guardian, please step forward. Nothing happened. Delegates looked at each other. A few turned to the back of the chamber, where a slouched figure sat in the shadows, unmoving. Whispers began to rise. Is that it? That's the Earthborn. He looks unconscious. Surely a mistake. The chamber moderator glanced at his datapad, confirmed the identity, and cleared his throat. Human Guardian, stand. Still nothing. Then, finally, the man shifted. He groaned softly, stretched his neck, and stood. No special suit. No glimmering armor. He wore a tattered utility jacket, heavy boots, and a datapad wristband flickering with low battery. His face bore an old scar across his brow, and his eyes, sunken, tired, glanced across the crowd like someone just waking up from a bad dream. He stepped onto the platform, and the laughter began. It wasn't loud. Not at first. Just a trickle of snorts and smirks. But soon, a Trask diplomat chuckled openly. The Grentha war matron grinned. And when the Joval twins started pointing and making translator-filtered jokes, even the moderators didn't intervene. This is Earth's best. He looks barely alive. I've seen cargo loaders with more posture. He forgot his weapons. The human said nothing. He simply adjusted the wristband on his arm, stretched his shoulders, and stood quietly at the center of the arena. The floor below him shimmered. The arena simulation had begun. One by one, the Guardians had demonstrated their capabilities. Now, he would face an evaluation foe, a synthetic opponent designed to simulate a class for Battlefield Predator. A golden gate at the far end hissed open. From it emerged a brutal monstrosity, 8 legs, segmented carapace, acid-dripping mandibles. A biomechanical hybrid designed for war, stronger than a Trogarn, faster than a Varnax, and programmed to kill. The arena's threat detection grid activated, tracking vitals. The human didn't flinch. No shields. No pulse blades. Just boots on the ground and 2 empty hands. Somewhere in the crowd, a young alien cadet muttered, "They sent a civilian." Then the beast roared and charged. Delegates leaned forward, expecting a quick splatter. Some even stood, eager to turn away before the blood hit the walls. But the human didn't move. Not until the last moment. In a blur of motion so fast the grid lagged behind, the human shifted his weight, ducked beneath the beast's lunge, rolled across its undercarriage, and struck a nerve joint beneath its thorax with a precise elbow jab. The creature screamed. Before it could pivot, he was already atop its back. His fists, bare, slammed into key nodes along its spine, disrupting neural flow. With a final wrench of his shoulders, he twisted one of its armor plates free and drove it into the creature's own cranial port. The beast spasmed, then collapsed. Dead. Silence. The human exhaled once. No showboating. No pose. Then, slowly, he walked off the platform. The laughter was gone. Delegates stared in wide-eyed disbelief. Some rewound their HUD feeds. Others ran simulations. The moderator dropped his tablet. From the rear tier, a calm voice finally spoke. That move was Earth's version of a kill sequence, wasn't it? The human paused, looked over his shoulder. It was just a warm-up. He stepped out of sight, and in that moment, the galaxy stopped laughing. Silence lingered in the grand chamber like an old ghost. Delegates who had moments ago laughed now exchanged uncertain glances. The simulation beast, a Class 4 hunter, rated to survive multiple energy barrages, lay twitching on the floor, defeated without weapons, by a human who hadn't even broken a sweat. The Trogarn warlord, who earlier slammed his fists and cracked glass, snorted and stood. He was lucky, he growled. One strike landed just right. Coincidence. Let the boy face something real. The moderator hesitated. Protocol stated that only one evaluation foe was to be deployed per representative. But now 50 worlds were murmuring, their pride wounded. And more importantly, their fear kindled. The human guardian had shattered expectations. That couldn't go unchallenged. From the upper balcony, a crystalline envoy tapped her translator and spoke in resonant clicks. If Terra claims such strength, let it be tested. Let him face a living apex champion. Heads turned. All eyes landed on a black-armored behemoth stepping from the shadows. Over 7 feet tall, shoulders broader than most doors, a Crocs elite named Glavernack. His title, Champion of 12 Wars. A hush swept through the delegates. Glavernack was a terror even among warrior cultures. He had survived wars on gravity-crushed worlds, swam through acid lakes during the Felnock siege, and once dismembered a Reaper Wraith barehanded. The human guardian had not even been introduced by name. The moderator opened his mouth to protest, but the human beat him to it. Accepted. His voice echoed calmly, like he'd just agreed to carry groceries. A second simulation barrier raised, locking both the human and the Crocs within a 60-meter-wide combat grid. Atmospheric settings shifted. Gravity increased. Oxygen thinned. For most species, this would have impaired movement or cognition. The human rolled his neck, exhaled, and took position. Glavernack grinned, revealing fangs like obsidian spears. I'll leave enough pieces to send back to your planet. The human stared at him, expression unreadable. That's sweet of you. A chime rang out. The match began. Glavernack charged. He was fast. Too fast for a being of his size. Every step cracked the reinforced arena. His war axe came down in a sweep that would have bisected a stone tank. The human wasn't there. He'd sidestepped before the blow landed, pivoting like a dancer. His right foot swept low, targeting Glavernack's left knee. Nothing flashy, just efficient. The Crocs staggered, adjusted, and launched a retaliatory back fist. This time, the human caught it. Caught it. Gasps echoed across the chamber. The human's feet dragged slightly from the impact, but he didn't fall. He redirected the momentum, twisting the arm and bringing Glavernack's own weight against him. The Crocs crashed onto the floor. Shockwaves trembled through the grid. Glavernack roared in fury, leaping up. You dare touch me like that? The human replied with a single punch, a blur, striking the Crocs' clavicle. A cracking sound like thunder echoed. Glavernack howled in pain, clutching his shoulder. He was hurt. He was actually hurt. And the human still hadn't drawn a weapon. Now panic crept into the hearts of the proudest warriors present. The Grintha war matron, who had earlier smirked, leaned closer to her assistant. He's not just trained. He's been in real wars. Not simulations. The assistant nodded nervously. He fights like someone who's had to survive. Inside the arena, Glavernack adjusted his stance. Blood leaked from his arm joint. He drew a plasma dagger, snarling. No more games, Terran. The human raised one brow. Finally. Then it was over in 10 seconds. The Crocs lunged. The human ducked, disarmed him mid-swing, flipped the dagger in hand, and drove it point first into the Crocs' chest plate joint, precisely between the 5th and 6th rib structure. Not fatal, but disabling. Glavernack dropped like a collapsing building. Medical drones swarmed in. The chamber was silent again, but this time it trembled, not with humor, but with awe, fear, respect. The human turned, made no dramatic gestures, and simply walked out of the simulation grid. Your arena's nice, he said calmly to the moderator as he passed. But your expectations are lazy. Someone finally asked, voice shaking. Who is he? The Terran envoy, a gray-haired woman in a blue formal coat, smiled from the far corner. That's Staff Sergeant Aaron Vance. Retired Earth Forces. He was deployed to the Siege of Titan, the hive coals of Europa, and the last stand on Outpost 19. A data screen projected his service record. There were more combat hours listed than most species' entire military histories. The Joval twins swallowed hard. Vance sat back down in the corner of the hall, pulled a ration bar from his coat, and started eating. Like nothing had happened. Like breaking a Crocs warlord in front of galactic royalty was just a lunch break. Because to him it was. And across the galaxy, messages started flying. Earth has warriors we don't understand. Do not engage Terran personnel without overwhelming force. Forget their tech. Fear their people. 3 hours after the duel in the Grand Chamber, a quiet panic had begun to spread, not among civilians, but among generals, among war councils, among empires that had, until now, casually ranked Earth among the minor races. And the cause of it all? A man sitting alone in a transit lounge, still in the same scuffed boots and faded jacket. Sergeant Aaron Vance, the human guardian. He sat beside a window, sipping dark Terran coffee while watching freighters drift across the sky above Verka Station. Behind him, a pair of sleek reconnaissance drones hovered silently, gathering data. Vance didn't bother turning. You can tell your handlers they're too loud, he said, taking another sip. Smells like oil and ammonia. Real subtle. A faint whir, then silence. The drones zipped away. Across the galaxy, 50 intelligence agencies tried to build profiles on Vance. What they found didn't comfort them. His psych evals were redacted. His battlefield deployments? Confirmed in multiple Class 5 environments. One involved prolonged exposure to vacuum-adjacent conditions. Worse yet, he had no cybernetic enhancements. No neural combat rig. Just muscle, instinct, and what the Terrans called absurd levels of stubbornness. That terrified the spymasters most. Back in the high tower above the diplomatic arena, panic turned into argument. He cannot be the only one, snapped Lord Resk, claws tapping against a crystalline table. If Earth breeds such creatures, we are already behind. He's an anomaly, hissed another. One rogue weapon, trained from childhood perhaps. No, interrupted Admiral Vorex, eyes narrowed. He's not an exception. He's a standard. The room froze. Vorex had faced Terrans before, and he still walked with a limp from it. Their soldiers are not pampered heirs or genetic elites. They're forged, made by fire, not privilege. That man didn't posture. He executed. That means he's trained for real wars. Long ones. Messy ones. A representative of the Xyrus Syndicate leaned forward. So what do we do? Send a message? Threaten their council? Vorex shook his head slowly. No. We reevaluate the power scale. That night, the Assembly quietly updated their military index. Earth, once rated Tier 3 threat, strategic nuisance, was now bumped to Tier 1 watch list, alongside only 3 other known species. But the galaxy wasn't done testing. 3 days later, on the jungle world of Areska Prime, a peace delegation arrived, Earth included. It was supposed to be ceremonial. Each race would walk through the path of unity, unarmed, to show trust. But ambushes are never ceremonial. A rogue faction, bitter about humanity's rising reputation, triggered an attack. 50 drones, pulse rifles, kinetic nets. The diplomats scrambled for cover. Security droids were cut down in seconds. And in the middle of it, one man was already moving forward. Vance. No armor. No rifle. Just fists, boots, and fury. The first drone caught a rock to the lens and spiraled into a tree. The second had its stabilizer ripped out mid-flight. Vance moved like a hurricane. Efficient. Unrelenting. Terrifying. The attackers realized too late, this wasn't just a soldier. This was someone who fought as if death itself bored him. One of the drones fired a suppression volley. Vance slid under the fire, snapped its rifle arm clean off, and used the still-charged weapon to down 3 more. In less than 4 minutes, the ambush was over. Not because they were all destroyed, but because the survivors fled. Vance stood in the smoke, panting once, then casually walked back toward the other diplomats. His coat was singed. A thin cut bled down his cheek. He wiped it away without a word. The Tyran ambassador approached, trembling. That was you, how did you? Vance glanced over. We trained for worse back home. This was mild. Mild. He shrugged. No bone breaks. Nobody lost an eye. Barely counts as a warm-up. The Tyran stared at him like he'd just spoken in ancient tongues. News of the ambush, and how one human ended it, spread faster than light. It made headlines on hundreds of worlds. But Earth didn't boast. The Terran diplomat gave only a short statement. Our Guardian did what any of yours should have done, stood up. The message hit harder than any weapon. In response, smaller races began sending emissaries to Earth, not to threaten, but to learn. They wanted to study Terran training regiments, to understand their survival instincts. The Galactic Arena Council announced a new series of open challenges. And to the shock of many, Earth declined. Their reason? We don't fight to show off. We fight when there's no other choice. But the invitations kept coming. One name was requested more than any other. Vance. He ignored them. Instead, he returned to the mountain outposts on Mars, where young recruits trained beneath red skies. He taught them to endure, to adapt, to never fear. And when asked why he didn't stay in the limelight, he simply said, I already stood up once. That was enough. But the galaxy had a long memory, and many feared that if Earth's Guardian ever stood up again, it wouldn't be a fight. It would be a reckoning. The political corridors of the Intergalactic Combat Academy were tense. The footage of Ava's demonstration had spread beyond the Academy's walls, reaching defense councils, military networks, and war academies across the galaxy. What began as an internal test had ignited interstellar curiosity and concern. High Chancellor Velix of the Trinari Confederation stood before a massive screen, replaying Ava's first battle against Kortau for the 5th time. The advisors around her murmured, uncertain whether they were watching an elite fighter or a harbinger of something much worse. She wasn't simply trained, Velix said finally, her voice tight. She was engineered. No, Chancellor, said her intelligence officer. That's natural. That's just Earth. Meanwhile, Ava's presence at the Academy had shifted the very balance of cadet alliances. Rumors swirled that she could dismantle combat drones with her bare hands, that she slept outside in sub-zero environments as a form of comfort, that she had once killed a predator using only a rock and rope at age 10. But Ava ignored the whispers. She trained. Alone. Relentless. In the strategy chamber, Commander Ixel and a select panel reviewed her psychological profile. No signs of aggression. No emotional instability, said the Drenari psychologist. But she has limits, and you're pushing her toward them. Ixel folded his arms. She was sent here to wake the galaxy up. Now it's awake. On the 5th day after her public match, a new challenge was issued, not from a cadet, but from an instructor, Master Krogan of the Karash martial doctrine. Krogan was ancient by galactic standards, having trained warriors for over 200 years. He believed that strength came from spirit and legacy. He did not believe in deathworlders. Ava was summoned to the central arena once more. The crowd was larger this time. The governors of 5 sectors had dispatched observers. Even a few bounty guilds sent analysts, their helmets reflecting the arena lights as they recorded everything. Krogan stood in the center with a heavy staff forged from tritanium root metal. His 4 arms flexed in rhythm, and his voice echoed. You are young, fast, precise, but you lack tradition. I wasn't raised on tradition, Ava replied. I was raised to survive. Krogan charged without warning. It was different this time. No roar. No heavy strikes. Just fast, brutal efficiency. He struck low, high, then twisted midair to sweep her off her feet. The force of his blows left dents in the ground. He was trying to finish it fast. Ava moved like water, evading, absorbing, redirecting. But Krogan was relentless. Blow after blow rained down, and for the first time, Ava showed effort. Her breath sharpened, her foot slipped, her brow beaded with sweat. The crowd leaned in. Was she losing? Then Ava stopped moving. Krogan's staff struck, dead center. It shattered. The audience gasped. Krogan staggered back, blinking at the remains of his broken weapon. Ava hadn't dodged. She had absorbed the strike, using her own skeletal compression and muscle alignment to dissipate the impact. She stepped forward. One strike. An open palm blow to Krogan's chest. The impact lifted him half a meter into the air and threw him 10 paces backward. He landed hard. Not unconscious. But still, he raised one hand, acknowledgement of defeat. This time, the crowd did not gasp. They stood. They clapped. Slowly at first, then louder. A rare honor in the Academy. After the match, Ava returned to her quarters. She opened her datapad and found a new message. Subject Ava Ward. Transition to Deathworlder Initiative. Phase 3 approved. She locked the screen. Outside, a team of high-level officers arrived at the academy. Among them was General Threx of the Coalition Defense Corps. He had one objective: recruit the girl. Because now the galaxy wasn't just watching. It was preparing. And Ava had become something more than a cadet. She was Earth's signal to the stars. We are not what you think. Ava Ward stood silently in the shadow of the mountain range that bordered the Academy's highest-tier combat valley, Sector Omega. This was where legends were forged and broken. Only the most elite cadets ever stepped foot here, and even fewer walked away with their pride intact. But today was different. Today, every cadet, regardless of rank, species, or faction, had been summoned. Because today, a new form of training was about to begin. Deathworlder training. Instructors had tried to object. The Intergalactic Combat Academy had protocols, traditions, rankings. But after Ava's systematic takedown of the Apex champion, after her performance in the classified simulation trials, and after the unspoken ripple effects across dozens of military sectors, no one could ignore her anymore. She had become the silent revolution, and the Academy had no choice but to adapt. A floating drone projection displayed the title of the new course: Deathworld Combat Readiness, Tier 0. The cadets murmured, Tier 0. There's no such classification. That's below Tier 1. Why call it that? Commander Ixel appeared before the crowd. Behind him stood Ava, expressionless, arms crossed, eyes scanning the field. Tier 0, Ixel began, is not a rank. It is a warning. He gestured to Ava. This human cadet will now demonstrate 10 minutes of survival combat. There will be no weapons, no assistance, and no restrictions. Some cadets laughed, until the drones released what they called the Omega Predators. The beasts were part synthetic, part bio-enhanced abominations collected from multiple Deathworld environments. Each one stronger than a Titanian, faster than a Noxian, and utterly lethal. 5 were released into the valley. Ava stepped forward alone. The moment the siren sounded, the first beast lunged, fangs wide, eyes glowing. Ava didn't run. She shifted. The cadets watched in frozen horror as she twisted under its leap, grabbed a lower limb mid-flight, and slammed the creature into the canyon wall with enough force to rupture stone. Without a breath wasted, she vaulted off the falling carcass and engaged the next. The second came low, trying to snap at her ankles. She flipped, pivoted in midair, and drove her heel into its spine. The third tried to flank. She used its momentum against it and sent it spiraling into the ravine. By minute 5, all 5 beasts lay broken. Ava stood alone, blood streaked across her uniform, not a single wound on her body. The silence from the cadets was absolute. Ixel turned to them. Do you understand now? She is not here to learn. She is here to show you the difference between strength and survival. Whispers turned to awe. The simulation logs were sent to every military faction across the galaxy. The footage was reviewed in war councils. Tactical scientists tried to slow down the video to study her moves. They still couldn't replicate it. In the weeks that followed, Ava became more than an anomaly. She became a curriculum. Cadets who once mocked her now lined up for her classes. Instructors asked for joint sessions. War veterans requested audience with her techniques. But not everyone applauded. From the outer sectors of the Orion Reach, whispers of a collective emerged, the Apex Union. A conglomerate of warrior species who saw the rise of a human Deathworlder as a threat to their legacy. One of their envoys, a cloaked giant known only as Theric, arrived at the Academy. He didn't request a meeting. He issued a challenge. A traditional Apex trial. Not a simulation. Not training. A fight to the end. Ava accepted without hesitation. The arena was reset. This time, no simulations, no controlled variables. Just rock, dust, and blood. Theric entered with twin plasma blades and bioplated armor laced with adaptive shielding. A crowd of thousands watched from above, some betting, others praying. Ava entered empty-handed. Ixel stood beside the judge's box. She doesn't need weapons, he said quietly. She is one. The match began. Theric was unlike any opponent she had faced. He didn't charge blindly. He tested, feinted, adapted. Every move calculated. Every strike meant to kill. Ava countered, blocked, retreated. For minutes, neither gained the upper hand. Then he spoke. You are not superior. You are just fast. She didn't answer. He came with a sweeping arc aimed for her throat. She ducked, caught his wrist, twisted, then dislocated his shoulder with a flick. The crowd gasped. He roared and headbutted her, sending her back. Blood streamed from her forehead. She smiled. Theric hesitated, and that was all she needed. In a flurry of motion that few even caught, Ava delivered 6 strikes to his major nerve clusters. He dropped to one knee. She disarmed him with a palm strike, leapt over his back, and planted him face first into the ground with a grappling hold so precise it bypassed his armor. Theric tapped out, not because he was beaten, because he feared death. The arena exploded in cheers, but Ava simply walked off the field, wiping the blood from her brow. Theric stood slowly, dazed, and looked at her retreating figure. Earth raises demons, he muttered. From that day forward, Ava's legend was cemented, not as a warrior, but as a guardian. Of Earth, of humans, of deathworlders. And the galaxy would never be the same. The bridge of the defense station pulsed with quiet alarms and red light, flickering across the tense faces of the high command. Everyone had seen the footage now. Every species represented in the academy had reviewed it at least twice. The whispers were over. The debate had ceased. Now, there was only action and the need for answers. Standing at the center of the command table was Commander Ixal, grim and silent. The Deathworlder initiative had reached the final trigger. Stage 6. Are you sure? Asked the Cellari strategist, his multiple eye stalks twitching. Ixal simply nodded. She is ready. She was born ready. The skies above the academy were not calm anymore. Ships had arrived. Warships, not cadet vessels. Not observers. Not transports. Real military crafts, some from factions that hadn't sent a peace delegation in decades. Word had spread far beyond the Academy's control, and someone, no one knew who, had sent a challenge. Or perhaps it was bait. A full-scale wargame had been arranged. Not one based on simulations. No, this was going to be live. Blunt. Dangerous. Ava Ward, Earth's guardian, would lead a small squad. 6 cadets, handpicked. Not the strongest. Not the fastest. The ones who had asked to learn from her. And her opponent? A multi-species unit of apex warriors, gathered from the elite combatants of 10 advanced worlds. Veterans. Champions. Masters of their fields. Their mission, to overwhelm her unit. This wasn't a test anymore. It was a proving ground for fear. You'll die out there, human, one of the opposition captains sneered during the final briefing. Ava looked up slowly. No, she said, her voice calm as still water. We'll show you how to survive. The wargame began on a jungle moon. Dense, humid, full of predators and thick canopies. The terrain was unfamiliar to every species, except one. This reminds me of South Amazon sectors, Ava muttered, pressing her hand to the soil. She gestured for her team to move in silence, using signs instead of speech. No comms. No energy trails. Total ghost movement. The first ambush came fast. Drones. 24, insect-like, moving through the air with quiet, deadly precision. Ava didn't fire. She closed her eyes, listened. 1 second. 2. Then her hand lashed out, hurling a magnetic grenade straight through the tallest drone's eye cluster. EMP. All drones fell in a chain, crashing like dominoes. Her team didn't cheer. They just moved. One of her cadets, the Plaxian with 4 arms, Sarah, whispered, "That was brilliant." Ava shook her head. That was necessary. They pushed through the jungle, skirting detection nets and pressure mines. She mapped them by instinct, sensing the slight humidity shifts and plant patterns. Where others saw foliage, Ava saw traps. Where others walked, she flowed. By the time they reached the midpoint, 3 teams of elites had already been eliminated. How? Barked one of the instructors watching the live feed. How is she predicting everything? She isn't predicting, Ixal replied. She's surviving. It's what humans do. At the river crossing, things changed. The opposing commandos launched a coordinated strike. Plasma rounds, sonic burst grenades, a collapsing gravity dome. Enough to shatter most squads in seconds. Ava's team scattered on cue. She moved like lightning. Vaulting off a tree, using a route to spring over the dome's edge, she landed behind enemy lines and disarmed 2 veterans before they even turned. Her strikes were silent, surgical. But then, a projectile clipped her side. Ava dropped to a knee, blood spilling down her ribs. From the command room, Ixal stiffened. Pull her team out. No, said the Drenari analyst. Watch. Ava stood. She pressed her fingers into the wound. Not to stop the bleeding, to feel the pain. Then she looked at her cadets, some cornered, others pinned, and she moved. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't graceful. It was brutal. Like a force of nature, Ava tore through the enemy flank, weaponizing the jungle itself. Thorns, branches, stones. She cracked armor, dislocated limbs, used terrain to outsmart superior tech. And she didn't stop until her team was free. At the edge of the combat zone, her team limped to the final marker. Exhausted, bleeding, alive. The last transmission came from the elite strike team leader. We lost. To cadets. Led by her. The war game was over. The analysts were stunned. The instructors were silent. Ixal stood slowly, turning toward the council. You asked what a deathworlder could teach us. You asked if Earth was worthy of its seat in this alliance. Now you've seen. He stepped back. A final image appeared on the main holo. Ava Ward, kneeling with bloodied hands, surrounded by 6 cadets looking at her like she was something between a savior and a legend. And underneath, one word appeared in galactic standard. Guardian. Back in her quarters, patched and healing, Ava sat alone. Her datapad blinked. New message. Directive Earth Prime. Ava Ward to report home. Mission complete. Phase 2 begins. She smiled. Not because of pride, but because she knew. This wasn't the end. It was the start of something even bigger. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy had just seen its first Guardian.